The neon glow of Shakey's pizza sign flickered ominously as I pulled my old, rusty bike into the employee parking lot. The place was never the same after the renovations, at least not for me. For years, I had worked here, slinging pizzas and making ice cream floats. But lately, it had become something else entirely. As I walked through the double doors, a blast of warm, greasy air hit me like a familiar, unwelcome hug. The restaurant was packed, as usual, with families, couples, and kids celebrating birthdays. But amidst the laughter and clatter of plates, something felt off. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I slipped into my red and white striped uniform, feeling the polyester stick uncomfortably to my skin. The bright colors and cartoon characters plastered on the walls only added to the eerie contrast of the place. I tightened the apron around my waist, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that had settled in my gut. "Hey there, Eddie," he called. "Oh, Karen," my coworker, and the only other person who'd been here as long as I had. "Busy night, huh?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. I wanted to tell her about the strange occurrences I'd been experiencing lately, but it all sounded too ridiculous. Tables set perfectly for a party that never arrived, lights that flickered in patterns I couldn't explain, and the persistent sensation of being watched. As the evening wore on, I found myself taking refuge in the kitchen whenever I could. The loud hum of the industrial dishwasher, the sizzle of pizza in the oven, and the shouts of the chefs gave me some respite from the unsettling ambience of the dining area. I was lost in thought while arranging pepperoni slices when a chilling voice broke through my reverie. "Eddie, mind running to the basement for me? We're out of sauce." It was Tony, the meaty, mirror, his usual grin replaced by a weary expression. I couldn't say no, so I grabbed a few empty sauce containers and made my way to the door that led to the basement. The stairwell was dimly lit, and the creaky wooden steps protested loudly as I descended into the darkness below. My footsteps echoed ominously, and the air grew damp and heavy. The basement had always given me the creeps, but tonight it felt even more unsettling. As I filled the containers with sauce, I heard a faint whisper, like a secret being shared in hushed tones. My heart raced. I strained my ears to listen, but the voice faded, leaving me with nothing but a sense of unease. I rushed back upstairs, eager to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the basement. Tony was waiting for me, his brow furrowed as he took the sauce containers. "Thanks, Eddie. You all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." I chuckled nervously. "Just a bit spooked, that's all." Tony nodded, but there was a glimmer of something in his eyes, something that told me he knew more than he was letting on. He patted my shoulder and went back to work. As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that the restaurant was changing. It was subtle, but the walls seemed to close in, and the noise of the customers grew distant, as if I were underwater. I glanced around and saw Karen talking animatedly with a family at a table. Their faces were twisted in expressions of fear and disbelief, and I realized she was telling them one of her ghost stories. I hurried over, hoping to distract her from the tales of the supernatural. "Hey, Karen, can you give me a hand with this table?" She shot me a glare, but followed me to a table littered with half-eaten pizza and spilled drinks. As we cleaned up, I whispered to her, "You need to stop with the ghost stories. It's freaking out the customers." Karen scoffed. "Come on, Eddie, lighten up. People love a good scare." But I wasn't convinced. Something was terribly wrong, and I didn't want to add fuel to the fire. As the clock neared closing time, the atmosphere grew even more oppressive. The once vibrant restaurant now felt like a prison, its walls lined with secrets that refused to stay buried. I helped Karen lock up, and as we turned off the lights one by one, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. We made our way to the employee break room, where a dim fluorescent light flickered overhead. Karen slumped into a chair, exhausted from a long night of work. I paced back and forth, unable to sit still. "Karen," I began hesitantly, "have you noticed anything strange here lately? I mean, besides your ghost stories." She looked at me, her eyes serious now. "You mean like the lights flickering and tables being set up for no one?" I nodded, relieved that I wasn't alone in my experiences. "Exactly, and that whisper in the basement." Karen shivered. "Yeah, I've heard that too." I thought I was losing my mind. We exchanged stories of the bizarre occurrences we'd witnessed over the past few weeks. It was a relief to know I wasn't going insane, but it also deepened the sense of dread that hung over us. Just as we were about to leave, Tony appeared in the doorway. His normally jovial demeanor was replaced by a grave expression. "You two should go home now," he said. "I'll finish up here." As we left the restaurant, I couldn't help but glance back at the darkened windows. It felt as though the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. Over the next few days, Karen and I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over us. We decided to do some research, hoping to uncover any dark secrets about the restaurant's history. It took some digging, but we eventually found an old newspaper article from decades ago. The article detailed a tragic fire that had swept through the building, claiming the lives of several employees and customers. It was a horrific event, and the restaurant had been closed for years afterward. That explained the odd occurrences and the whispers in the basement. The place was haunted, not by ghosts, but by the memories of that terrible night. We decided to confront Tony with our findings, hoping he would have some answers. When we showed him the article, his face turned pale, and he reluctantly admitted that he had known about the fire. He had kept it a secret to avoid scaring away customers. But the strange occurrences, Karen pressed, the whispers, the tables being set up. "What's causing all of that?" Tony sighed heavily. "I don't know, and I don't want to find out. I thought the past was behind us, but maybe it's not. Maybe this place is cursed." The three of us agreed to keep the restaurant's dark history a secret, fearing that revealing it would only make things worse. We continued to work there, but the sense of dread never left us. One night, as I was closing up the kitchen, I heard a faint whisper coming from the basement again. It was more distinct this time, a chorus of voices filled with anguish and fear. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I descended into the basement, my heart pounding in my chest. The voices grew louder and more desperate as I reached the bottom of the stairs. I followed the sound, my flashlight trembling in my hand. In the dim light, I saw them flickering, ethereal figures of people, their faces contorted in agony. They reached out to me, their hands passing through my body like a chilling breeze. I stumbled back, overwhelmed by a sense of sorrow and despair. It was then that I understood. The restaurant wasn't haunted by vengeful spirits. It was haunted by the memories of those who had perished in the fire. They were trapped here, reliving their final moments over and over, unable to move on. I rushed back upstairs, my mind reeling. I had to do something, anything to help these lost souls find peace. But as I reached the top of the stairs, the basement door slammed shut behind me, trapping me in the darkness. Panicking, I pounded on the door, shouting for help. But there was no response. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and I could feel the weight of their anguish pressing down on me. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes, I couldn't tell. I was alone in the suffocating darkness, surrounded by the tormented voices of the past. It was a horror beyond anything I had ever experienced. Just when I thought I couldn't bear it any longer, the basement door creaked open and a hand reached out to pull me to safety. It was Tony, his face etched with worry. "We heard your screams," he said, helping me to my feet. "Are you okay?" I nodded, still shaken by the ordeal. "We have to do something, Tony. We can't let those souls suffer like this." He looked at me with a determined expression. "You're right, Eddie. It's time to put this place to rest." The three of us decided to hold a memorial for the victims of the fire, a way to honor their memory and help them find peace. We invited their surviving family members, who were grateful for the closure. As we gathered in the restaurant, the atmosphere felt different, lighter somehow. As we lit candles and shared stories, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The whispers in the basement had quieted, and the oppressive weight that had hung over the restaurant for so long began to lift. In the end, Shakey's Pizza became a place of healing, a place where the past was acknowledged and the restless souls could finally find rest. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of places, there is always hope, and sometimes the most terrifying horrors are the ones that can be overcome. And so, with the flicker of a candle's flame, the shadows of the past receded, and the pizzeria regained some of its former warmth and charm. But none of us would ever forget the horrors we had witnessed in that place, the price paid for keeping dark secrets hidden for so long.